Hi crafty friends, Shana from ShanoukiArt. This is card number 47 in Full Deck Challenge 2. The prompt is Frankenstein, and I'm not thinking of the traditional green squared head monster. Instead, we're going to prepare our card, cut it up, and then put it back together. This one is really going to take you out of your comfort zone. Start by preparing your card in any colors and styles you like. I'm going to go with a vintage rustic look, so I'm going to start by adding a piece of tissue paper to the face of my card. The tissue paper I'm using is an old dress pattern. I like the vintage color and feel that it has. I'm adding it to my card using Mod Podge. Once I add my tissue paper to the face of the card and press it down as flat as I can, I'm going to add a layer of Mod Podge over the top as well. This will strengthen the tissue paper so it doesn't tear when I add any other kind of watery medium on the top. I'm going to dry the Mod Podge well, and then I'm going to trim off the excess tissue. You can either do this with the scissors or you can tear it. For this one, because we're going for more of a rough and Frankenstein kind of look and it doesn't have to be neat, I'm just going to tear the edges. Don't worry too much if some of the tissue paper tears off the face of the card and the white is showing. You can cover that up with some ink. You can add additional tissue paper. For me, I don't really mind. It adds to the style and the feel of this card. I'm not quite sure yet exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going to add a few different layers. I'm going to start with some stenciling. I'm using black ink through my number stencil and my blending brush. And when I've done this, I'm not crazy about it, so I'm going to change it. So using some grit paste, which is a Tim Holtz product, and the same number stencil, I'm going to go over the same numbers with some grit paste and my palette knife. This grit paste is like texture paste. It's slightly thicker, but it also has a coarser feel to it. So like the name says, grit, it's a bit more chunky and there's more bits inside, which gives it additional texture. I've only gone over the one lot of numbers at the bottom. I'm now also going to add some just with my palette knife, spreading it across parts of the card. I'm leaving it quite thick in certain areas because it really leaves a beautiful texture, which I'll try and show you in a close-up shortly. We're going to dry that really well, and then I'm going to add some ink. I'm using my Distress ink sprays in the colors Tea Dye and Vintage Photo. I'm adding a few drops here and there, mainly over the grit paste areas, and then spraying with water. And then I'm also using my paintbrush just to help it move around over the sections. It tends to resist some of the ink on the actual surface of the grit paste, but on the edges of it and in some thicker areas, it actually absorbs the ink and creates beautiful different effects and color intensities. I'm going to hold this up closer to the camera. I hope you can see the beautiful effects that the grit paste and inks create. This section just makes my heart sing. And then I thought to add something metallic, so I have my antique gold metallic wax, which I added onto the 9, and this was an instant regret. I hated that I lost the white contrast of that number 9, so I'm going to try and fix that. So I'm going over with the baby wipe, trying to remove as much of the wax as I can, and then I thought, well, I'll just add another layer of texture paste or the grit paste over the 9 again to try and get that whiteness back. I mostly have it back to how it was. The 9 did smudge a bit, which doesn't really matter, but I'm going to try and create the defined edges just using my little awl or something pointy like a toothpick. You can try clear off the edges and get it a bit neater if that's what you prefer. And to try and get back a little bit more of that contrast, I'm going to add a bit more of the darker ink, just trying to get it in between the edges of where the 9 bottom is, just to try and get that a bit more defined so it looks like a 9 and not just a white blob. Thankfully, that's looking much better and I'm happy with that, and I have my beautiful white 9 again. I've then gone through my stash and found a couple of pieces of cardstock that are sort of matching and complementing my card, and now comes the big part. we're going to chop the card into pieces. Don't be scared, just do it. And then move them around, turn some upside down. The idea is for them not to match. They need to be like Frankenstein and not be matching. Didn't he have different parts from different bodies? I'm then going to tear a couple of strips of the cardstock that I found, and these bits are going to go in between the playing card. This is a great way again to use up any scraps that you have. And now we're going to reattach these pieces to each other. You can use any method you like. You can glue them. I'm going to use a sewing machine and I'm going to stitch them across. I've stitched together the top 3 pieces, the middle 2 and the bottom 2 using brown thread and a zigzag stitch. I then wanted a pop of color, so I used some turquoise thread to stitch 2 of the pieces together, again using the zigzag stitch. For the last section that needs to be joined, I'm going to use some staples. It's a mix and match of all sorts. If you don't have a sewing machine, you could also hand stitch this together. Again, you could use staples, you could paper clip it, you could glue it, whichever way you like. Some of the scrapbook cardstock that I've used is a little too long. I'm just going to tear it down slightly smaller so it sort of is in line with most of the other pieces. To create some more balance, I feel that I need to continue the turquoise pop of color, and I'm going to do this by adding a very small amount of turquoise paint splatter in the top right hand corner. I'm using a metallic turquoise acrylic paint that I'm watering down slightly, and then I'm going to splatter it just in the top right section. I think that adds so much dimension to the card. Once it's nice and dry, I'm going to add some additional stitching. In the bottom where the turquoise stitching is, there is a bit of a gap where there is an angle of the cardstock the way it's cut. So I want to just fill that up with some more stitching to make it a bit more obvious. So I'm going to create a few little holes with my awl just so it's easier to get the needle through. And then I have the same turquoise thread that I used for the stitching that I'm going to hand stitch and make the stitches a little bit bigger and more deliberate. You can join the Full Deck Challenge at any time. I will put both playlists in the description box below. We are nearing the end of Full Deck Challenge 2, but don't forget we still have the original challenge that started all of this. You can start on either deck at any time and you can work at your own pace. There's no time limits, there's no rush, there's no right and wrong. You can also do the cards in any order you like. If there's one that you don't like, you don't have to do it. If there's one that you like a lot, you can do that twice. You can either use my tutorials and copy mine exactly if that's what you'd like to do, or you can just use my tutorials and my process as an inspiration. And if you're on Facebook, you can join my group there. Just search Full Deck Challenge Group. I know some of you may be asking about all these loose threads that you see. Personally, I love them and they're going to stay on my project like this. If you don't like the loose threads, you can just trim them off. And here is my Frankenstein card in all its glory. I'm really happy the way this turned out. I really hope you enjoyed this video, something a little different, and I hope you're inspired to create your own Frankenstein card. I also really hope it gives you the courage to not worry about messing up and just cut the card up and put it back together. What's the worst that could happen? Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Happy creating. I'll see you again soon. Bye.